Howdy and welcome to episode 59 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen and today is Thursday, August 30th, 2018. And today's episode is mostly going to be about my adventures on the DFW Yarn Crawl. I hit almost every destination this year, so I will be talking about that throughout the episode. But I also have a little hack on my phone that I've been using to help me not waste so much time on Facebook and games and to get more reading done. So I'll talk about that in the What I'm Reading section. But we'll go ahead and dive right into today's episode. For the shirt today, I am wearing the shirt that I wore the Saturday of my trunk show during the DFW Yarn Crawl. And I picked this shirt, A, because I think it's cute, but also because someone pointed out to me something I didn't actually pay close enough attention to, that the little cat, if you look at the way he or she is holding the knitting needles, obviously whoever drew this probably isn't a knitter. It is not really, you know, being held quite the right way. It's more like maybe you're trying to eat some spaghetti or something. I'm not really sure. But I have another shirt that I wore on Sunday that also has a cat knitting, and that cat is actually holding the needles correctly, and that's what the person pointed out. She said, I have that shirt, I also have the blue one, and I was like, oh, I wore the blue one yesterday. She said, at least on this one, the other shirt, the needles are being held correctly. The blue one, they're not. And I went back and looked at it, and I was like, oh yeah, they really aren't. So I think I was just, I guess, taken in by cats and yarn. Speaking of cats, here is Wally's usual appearance. And I didn't even really look at how the needles are being held. So sometimes it's good to maybe pay a little more attention to your shirts, but I still love the shirt anyway. Still love cats, not so much cats in yarn. Wally and Eva did get in trouble a little bit the other day. I have all the samples that I'm making for my my talk at the Dallas Hand Knitters Guild, and I didn't realize that I had shut them both in my room, and when I came back the samples were like strewn everywhere. They are all okay, fortunately, but it looks like they had a little bit of fun with those. So I'm being extra careful to make sure that they are not in the room when I close my door. But apparently, podcast recording day, so of course Wally has to jump up into my lap. I'm going to have to put him down though for the next section, the shawl, because I do not want anything to happen to the shawl I'm about to show you. I am really, really excited about the shawl that I'm about to show you. I think this is probably one of my favorite projects I've ever made. Definitely top 10, probably top 5. This is my stargazing shawl. There you go. So, beaded, lace, gradient yarn, all of that put together. I am so happy with how this turned out. So this was meant to be my shawl for the second quarter knit along for the podcast. The theme was the math and science inspired, and so stargazing, I thought, hey, that's astronomy. So this is a pattern by Anna Victoria, who does amazing beaded shawls. If you love beaded shawls, you have to look up Anna Victoria. She does awesome, awesome work. And then the yarn is from Panorama Fiber Arts. This is one of her wonderful gradients. She does such an awesome job with gradients. And I wrote down the color Nightfall, which I also thought was really appropriate for stargazing. So it starts out at this, it's not even really a light blue, so it starts with this blue and it gets darker and darker and darker. And I didn't use up all of the yarn, so it goes to black pretty much. And I think I only got a little bit that was actually black. I think I just went really, really dark blue. So I didn't use up the entire gradient, but I still am really happy with how the color progresses. I have to say, if I haven't said this before, I know I've said this to several people, one of my life goals is to do every Anna Victoria shawl in Panorama gradients, because I think the combination of the two is just absolutely amazing. So hopefully I will start one soon. I got beads, I'll tell you about that later. I got beads for one of the other panorama gradients that I have in my stash. So that way I can pick a pattern and get started on that one. Anyway, so just super happy with how this came out. The beads I had originally thought that I would use, and I did use them on a couple of places. I think it's these. I originally thought that I would use these beads throughout, and if you look at those compared to these down here or the white ones in here, they just don't really stand out quite as much. They were more of a blue pearl type of color, and they don't quite pop as much as the crystal lined and the white. So I had posted on Instagram asking for opinions about the beads, and people were saying definitely the crystal lined, and that was the one that was like my third choice, but almost everyone picked that one. So I decided to trust Instagram, and you guys were right. I definitely think that was the right decision for this. I did use some of the white for just a little bit of highlighting. So some crystallined there, some white, but mostly this is all the crystalline beads. So definitely the right choice there. Thank you, Instagram. Yeah, I don't know really what else to say about this besides I am just really over the moon about this, and maybe that's the appropriate phrase to use for something called stargazing. So I did not finish it in time for the Q2 knit along, but that is okay. I am still happy that I finished it, and really excited that the Q2 knit along did give me the push to do this. Yeah, can't wait to do my next one, but definitely going to be enjoying this in the meantime. Oh, I have to say, I think I'm becoming a beaded shawl person. It's a lot of fun. I don't think I will bead every shawl that I make, but I'm definitely going to be doing more beaded shawl projects, and maybe not just Anna Victoria, but also beyond. So really excited about this project. Blocked and woven in, it is completely done, so I can actually use it. And that is kind of the big finished object, big thing that I have been working on lately. But I will talk about other projects I've been working on in the next section. So the big thing that I've been working on with what I'm knitting is all of the swatches for the talk that I'm going to give at the Dallas Hand Knitters Guild just next week. So if you are watching this when the podcast first comes out, hang on, Wally's just crawled into a paper bag, so if you hear crinkling in the background, that's what that is. So on next week on Tuesday, which is September 4th, yes, Tuesday, September 4th, I will be talking at the Dallas Hand Knitters Guild, which if you are not a member of that guild, you are still able to come as a guest. So don't feel like, oh, I'm not a member of the guild, but I really want to make it and I can't. So if you are available and you can come on that Tuesday evening, you are definitely welcome as a guest. You can go to the Dallas Hand Knitters Guild website to get information on time and location and all of that. Anyway, so I'm talking all about yarn, about ply structure, about twist, and a little bit about fiber content. So I'm doing all the swatches to prepare for that. So I've got this whole basket full of swatches. They're in Ziploc bags where I've got, wow, the glare on that is awful, where I've got little labels so I remember what's in the bag, but I've also created labels that I'm going to attach. Wow. That lighting and glare is awful. Labels that I'm going to attach to each swatch, so that way when I pass them around, people can feel the swatches and see on the label what that is. For everything, I have a stockinette and garter stitch swatch, so that way people can get a basic idea of what a yarn is like. And then for some of the yarns, I also have a lace swatch and a cable swatch. So I made a small cable swatch because I didn't want to do a whole bunch of really intricate cable swatches, because I realized I was running low on time and I needed to kind of speed things along. I still have three garter and stockinette swatches and 2 or 3, I think actually now I'm down to 2, cable swatches left to do. So still a little bit more to do between now and Tuesday, but I am getting there. I've got a whole basket full of swatches, and then I forgot to grab one to bring it over, but I am also doing little samples of some of the yarns, so that way I can pass them out along with the handout. I'm doing a little, like maybe 4 to 5 yard butterfly and then putting it in a little baggie and labeling the baggie. And it'll go with the handout so people can actually have some samples of each yarn. Not enough to do the size swatches that I've done, but enough to at least do a small swatch, like maybe like a small square, and also just to get more of a feel for the yarn. So if you are local and you are interested in getting those little yarn samples and hearing me talk, definitely on Tuesday, September 4th, 2018, come to the Dallas Hand Knitters Guild meeting and learn all about it. So that is the biggest thing that I've been working on, because although I kept thinking, oh, that's in September, you know, I've got plenty of time. It's right at the beginning of September. This is the end of August. It really hit me about a week ago. Oh my gosh, I need to get busy on these swatches because I do not have a lot of time. So that really is where the bulk of my knitting has gone. And I have done a little bit on the self-striping stocks that I currently have on the needles, which have been on the needles for a while. With using Brazen Stitchery yarn, which I'm pretty sure I showed you guys last time. They're actually in my purse right now, so they weren't in my work in progress basket, so I forgot to grab them. But I've done a little bit more on those. I think I'm about halfway through the foot, and it is the second sock, so I'm getting close to finishing those. And I've knit a few rounds on Boxy, so not enough to really, like, it's just a big tube. There's not really much to show you there. I'm still working on the body. And then the other thing that I've been working on, which sadly I'm not going to finish by the deadline, is stage 5 of Tortoise Sock. So I really like this pattern, and I'm sad that I'm not going to finish it by the deadline, but I am definitely going to finish these socks. And I'm using some sparkle yarn, so hopefully that will come across in the video. So this has cables and some lace. So there is a little bit of lace in there. Maybe if I stretch it out a bit, you might be able to see the lace a little bit better. Hopefully that sparkle is showing up. I'm seeing it on my end, so hopefully you're seeing it too. I'm halfway through the heel flap. Unfortunately, this is sock number 1, and I think Saturday morning is the deadline. But I've got to be honest, because I've got other stuff to do, plus just life, I'm not going to be able to finish these by the deadline. But like I said, I will finish these because I do like them, and so far they appear to be fitting me, so that is definitely a good thing. There is one more sock for Tortoise Sock, stage 6, so we'll be getting that this weekend. I'll kind of take a look at it and see how I feel about that pattern, if it's a colorwork pattern. I'll definitely attempt it, but it's not really the thing that I love to do. So we'll see what happens. I have to admit I'm a little disappointed with myself that I started strong on Tortoise Sock and really pushed through those first 3 stages, and then I think I got a little burned out, to be completely honest. And then when the 2 things that are my kind of least favorite things in socks, the stranded knitting plus the toe-up sock pattern, putting those together and doing it at the time where I was preparing for a trunk show, it was just a combination that really wasn't sustainable to keep up the pace that I had been doing. And I was hoping that with this stage 5 that I would be able to jump back in and get back on track, but it doesn't look like that's happening. I'm not going to give up on stage 6. I'm definitely going to give it a try, but I think I've gotten to the point where I'm okay. I've kind of forgiven myself for not being as enthusiastic and gung-ho as I was at the beginning. It's a really exhausting event. I know there are people who have finished every stage. Some that are finishing, you know, in like less than a day, the pair of socks, like less than half a day even. but others who are taking most of the time and still finishing. I'm really proud of those people, especially because I'm seeing what it takes to keep this up. So kudos to those who especially have finished every sock so far, but even those who have attempted, whether or not you finished, it's a big challenge. So with that being said, I have to admit that I'm looking forward to kind of getting done with the swatches, getting past tortoise sock, and getting back into knitting some of the other things that are on my needles, and starting some new projects, because there are some things I'm really excited about and looking forward to starting. This big pile of yarn back here is what I bought during the yarn crawl, and I do have plans for several of the things in there, which I will talk about throughout the rest of the episode. But yeah, I feel like I've my knitting has been stagnated a little bit. Not that I've regretted doing tortoise sock, but it feels like that has been my focus and everything else has gotten pushed aside. And then the swatches, that has been my focus. Everything else has been pushed aside, and I'm ready to get back to everything else. And excited about all of those current and upcoming projects. So hopefully in 2 weeks I will have some updates on other stuff I'm working on to share with you guys. Yarn crawl. So I feel like every other year is kind of my big year to crawl, and then the next year I kind of dial it back and don't do a bunch of crawling, because it's a fun 10 days, but it's also an exhausting 10 days. And I also think, what I was saying in the previous section about just getting back to my regular knitting that has been kind of pushed aside. I feel like the yarn crawl and all the days traveling and visiting all the shops also kind of pushed aside some of that knitting time. But it was a fantastic experience. And for me, it started off with work. I did my trunk show the very first weekend, Saturday and Sunday at Fleece, which is a Dallas shop. I had originally intended to go out that Friday and maybe hit a couple of shops then and get started crawling, but Thursday I was trying my hardest to get everything ready for my trunk show, and I realized that I wasn't going to get everything ready on Thursday, that I really needed Friday to continue to have enough time to get ready. So instead of going out and crawling on that Friday, I continued preparing for my trunk show. So Saturday morning I packed up the car, drove to Fleece, and set up. My goal was to set up in an hour. I was trying to do something that wasn't going to be too elaborate and take too much time, and I finished just a little over an hour, which I feel was actually pretty good. I was kind of worried that I might not get it done within the hour. I actually did a little video of the booth, so I will pop that in after I talk about the trunk show here. I'll pop in that segment and then continue on with the rest of my crawl. But basically I was trying a table setup for the most part. I did have some grid wall, but I definitely wanted to do more of a table setup, because the Into the Wool fiber retreat, which I'm going to in just a few weeks, actually I think 3 weeks, less than that actually, oh gosh, that we have a 6-foot table as our space for setup. So I wanted to try out some table arrangements to see what might be best to bring to the fiber retreat. So I did that. I actually got some new boxes, kind of display boxes, to see how those worked, and for the most part they worked okay, and that will probably be what I'm bringing to the retreat. So the trunk show, it was, Fleece is a nice shop. The owner, April, is a very nice person. I like that the shop was very bright and well lit and open, so it felt good to be in there. But I have to admit, I mean, this was my definitely the first trunk show that I've done since the Knitting Fairy closed. I've done fiber festivals, but that's completely different anyway. And I have to admit, part of me was a little homesick. It did feel a little bit strange not to be at the Knitting Fairy. But Fleece was very welcoming. There were a lot of familiar faces that came in, and then also I got to know some of the regulars who usually come to Fleece and some new people, which is, you know, always an exciting event. But definitely, especially the familiar faces. I got to meet some people who I've been talking to over email or on Instagram. Some of you who watch the podcast, hello. And I got to meet them in person for the first time. There were a couple of people there. And that was really exciting to get to do and see some projects that you guys have worked on. Using my yarn, so I always love that part. That's one of my favorite things to see. And all in all, it was a good experience. I'll just be honest, you know, on a business level, financially, sales were pretty good. So thank you very much for that. What was really exciting is that we had the We Knit in Texas fundraiser for the Hemophilia Foundation, which I really hope I talked about on the podcast last time. I'm pretty sure I did. So I actually had dyed a bunch of, I think like 27 or so skeins of yarn for the fundraiser, and brought a box of the yarn with a coupon code for the pattern. And that went really fast. By the end of the weekend, there were 2 skeins left, 2 of the undyed skeins, and those were actually claimed, I think, the very next day online. So that means we did really, really awesome with the fundraiser. So that was exciting to see. I actually have the numbers written down. Let me go forward. So I've already made a donation for $884. And $884. I should say that again. Isn't that awesome? So the sales that were on the website before the trunk show, and then the sales at the trunk show, and then there were a few people who pre-ordered at the trunk show because one of the colors they wanted was sold out. So that $884 was everything before the trunk show and up through the trunk show. And since the trunk show, I have another $51 to donate. I think that's 3 more kits worth of donations. I went ahead and donated the $884 because I did not want that money to sit in my bank account for long. So I've already made that donation, and so now I think probably every time it goes over 100, I'll go ahead and donate. We are doing the fundraiser through kind of mid to late October, so hopefully there will be more that goes into it, but even if there's not, we've at least already done a really awesome job. But if you have not yet bought your We Knit in Texas cowl kit, then I encourage you, please do so. It's a fantastic and amazing, and I am so incredibly thrilled by how we've done so far. So it was great to see that box of yarn that I brought to the trunk show basically disappear by the end of the weekend. So that was really, really exciting. And pretty much that is what I did on Saturday and Sunday. I did my trunk show, and I kind of thought about doing, looking forward to doing the crawl myself, but it was kind of tiring. But I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna get up on Monday and we are going to go and to do some yarn crawling. So I will put in the little segment here of my booth setup, so if you didn't go to the trunk show, you can see what that was like, and then I will share my yarn crawl experience.
So this is my booth setup. I basically have these boxes that have the yarn inside it. There's the enamel pins and the needle gauges. I'd originally put them behind the table and nobody was seeing them, so I moved them up. There is the We Knit in Texas. That is after almost all of the skeins were bought. It was a full box. That's awesome. And then I had the table 2-sided so people could come around and see more yarn on the other side. And then I had grid walls set up just a little bit for Camelot. That way all the colors could be seen a little more easily. And on this side, I only brought a few samples. So there were some samples there. Then I have the self-striping Merlin, which you can see the stock is pretty low. I only have about half the colors available now. And then there is the Merlin base with the semi-solids and tonals. And then back around the other side, one more sample, and that's it.
So first off, I have a new friend. So there is a woman who recently moved to the area. And she came to a Sunday knitting group that I belong to, and she was talking about how she was trying to find, you know, knitting groups to go to, and this was a little bit of a drive for her, but it was the closest one she could find. So I asked her, you know, well, where do you live? And it turns out she lives basically in the neighborhood next to mine. So I told her about our local Monday knitting group, and so she started coming to that. And then it turns out she has a 6-year-old son in 1st grade who actually is going to the other elementary school in our neighborhood. So he and Luke are unfortunately not at the same school, but it's really exciting to meet someone who's interested in knitting, who has a son the same age as my son. We have gotten them together. And they seem to get along and like each other, so that was really exciting. And so she and I decided to do the yarn crawl together. So this was actually the first time that I have crawled with somebody else. Well, okay, so I did crawl with Luke one year, but that is a very different experience. So this is the first time that I've actually done the yarn crawl with a friend. So we decided to hit the road on Monday, and we went up to Fiber Lady, which we had both already been to, because when I took some yarn up to Fiber Lady, in case you are local, Fiber Lady does have my Camelot base, so that's the merino cashmere nylon. So I was dropping off the yarn up there, and she actually came with me the day that I did that, before the crawl started. So we'd already been up there, and we got to see the machines running whenever we were up there at that point, but we knew that we were going to be coming back for the crawl, so we didn't buy anything while we were there. So, so this time we went with the expectation that we were definitely going to buy stuff. So the first thing I did, and I actually didn't add this to my pile, but I did check the clearance section that they had on the front outside the store, because I wanted to get some 100% bamboo yarn so I could use it for swatching for the guild talk that I'm doing next week. So I did get some for swatching. And then I didn't put this in any order, so I'm just gonna have to start pulling yarn. And then I noticed this yarn, which is a sport weight yarn that is called Bouncy Boo. So, oh man, I'm gonna have to maybe go pull the light back a little bit so the glare's not so bad. But this is 87% bamboo and 13% Sorona, S-O-R-O-N-A, and it has a little TM after it, trademarked. And I had never heard of Sorona. So I was talking to Michelle about, so what is Sorona? And I don't remember everything that she said, so I'm gonna have to look it back up. But it basically sounded like a really interesting non-petroleum based an alternative to fiber. And so that's nice. It made she had socks that she had made out of it, and it seemed to do really nicely in socks, so I think that is what I'm going to plan to make out of this. And there are 380 yards, so I'm not planning on making, I mean, it's sport weight, so I should be able to get a good pair of socks for myself out of this. And it's purple, I like the color, so I'm really happy with that. And yeah, that was the kind of big yarn purchase that I made there. And then the other thing that I got there was, and I haven't even taken it out of the packaging yet, so I need to do that and get it set up. But there's this knitting abacus bracelet. So I got one that has lots of different colors because I really liked the different bead colors. And basically the idea is that it's a bracelet that you wear. It can look pretty, but it's also a way that you can count your rows. that you've been working on, which, especially when I'm just trying to count, you know, rows of ribbing or something, I thought this would come in really handy. So I'm going to keep this out so I can take it out of the packaging and actually start using it. So that was really exciting to get. Then after the Fiber Lady, we went up to, where did we go? We went up to McKinney, of course. And we hit McKinney Knittery. I really like downtown McKinney. It is an area that is just lots of little shops, lots of restaurants. It's really pleasant to be around. My brother-in-law lives in McKinney, so I don't go up there a lot, but I have been up there several times, and I really like visiting the downtown area. So it was nice to kind of introduce my friend to the area and say, hey, this is probably some place you want to come back to, maybe with your family. Anyway, so the current location of McKinney Knittery is a little bit off of downtown, and they're actually moving to a new space that is more on the downtown kind of square area. And in fact, it turns out that where we parked was almost right in front of the new location of the store. So that was fun to see. This is where the store is going to be. Anyway, so we went into the McKinney Knittery, which is just, I can't imagine what they're going to do with more space, because just the amount of yarn, but also the nice way of arranging the yarn that they were able to get into the small space of their shop was really amazing. It was so difficult to decide what I wanted to get, because I knew I was definitely going to be buying stuff. So what was I going to buy while I was there? So we spent quite a while, you know, looking around and trying to make some decisions. And I finally decided that I wanted to get something from Long Dog Yarn, which I had never, wow, that, I'm gonna have to work with the light, which I'd never gotten before. So I decided that was going to be kind of the dyer that I was trying. And I saw this skein, and I'm normally, if you've watched the podcast before, you know, I'm going to stop this and fix the light. I'll be right back. Okay, I moved the light over to the side a little bit, so hopefully that will work out better. So I'm normally not a speckled person. That is not something that I buy a lot of, but for some reason this yarn just really called out to me. So I decided that it had to come home. So if you're not familiar, Long Dog Yarn, and there is a little long dog that is the image. So there's the dog's head. And I decided, you know what, putting a solid with this and doing something with brioche I thought would be really fantastic. So I picked this solid, which is one of the colors that are in the speckles, but I think that there's, they're not really long, you know, color sections of that color. So I think that will work really nicely together. So I don't have a pattern picked out yet, but I'm going to be doing something brioche with this yarn. So that is what, probably should have brought a bag to throw these in when I'm done. So that is what I got at McKinney Knittery. I think that's all I got there. And then because it was about lunchtime, we decided to go ahead and eat lunch at one of the restaurants on the square there. And I'd never been to the Irish pub. It's called the Celt. And one of the restaurants I missed the most from when we were living in Indiana was an Irish pub. So my friend was willing to give it a try, so we went in there and I got the shepherd's pie, which is one of my favorites. She got fish and chips, and the food was really, really good. I really enjoyed it, and she said hers was good as well. And then after that, we headed to Dallas, and we hit 2 of the 3 Dallas shops, since I had already been in Fleece for my trunk show, and she actually came over the weekend to my trunk show, so she already went to Fleece. We didn't go on Monday. So we hit Yarn and Stitches and Holly's. So at Yarn and Stitches, I got this basket. So it's a smaller basket than my bigger one that I usually store all of my works in progress in. but this is from Sew Secret, who does a lot of embroidery and the, I don't know if you would call it bedazzling, but definitely the little, I guess, jewels on the shirt. And I have a couple of her shirts. And I think I left the tag in here. Yep, there we go. So, Sew Secret. And especially if you're at DFW Fiber Fest, you can take your bags or whatever that you get there and have her put your name on them. That's something that is always exciting to do, but I really liked the little basket. Right now it's all the swatches for the Guild Talk is in there, but I think it'll be nice when I just want to take maybe 1 or 2 projects to one of my knitting groups rather than my entire basket full of projects. Plus now I have the little Yarnadillo, which I think is, no, Armadillo Yarnold. That's his name, Yarnold. So I'm really happy to get that bag. And Yarn and Stitches, they had a whole bunch of Yarn Carnival yarns they were setting out, and I love Yarn Carnival. But I was tempted by some of the things that had just been set out on the table, but I decided that I was trying to stick to a budget but also be able to buy something at every shop, so that way I could support as many shops as possible. So if I spent too much in one shop, then I might not be able to buy something in another shop. So I just stuck with the bag. And then we went over to Holly's, and at Holly's, I did not buy any yarn, but I made a purchase that I almost bought yarn. They had a Twisted Owl. So I was kind of looking through some of the Twisted Owl stuff and decided ultimately not to buy that. But I was really, really excited to find some Flexiflips in size 8. So 5mm size 8 Flexiflips. Why? Because if you've been watching the podcast, remember that cardigan that I've been working on that's been put aside for a while, the Let Go cardigan? All I have left on it is the sleeves. Flexiflips for the sleeves. Size 8 is what I'm using, so hopefully that'll work gauge-wise. So now I have no excuse not to do the sleeves for that cardigan. I have the needles. I was kind of using, well, I don't want to use double points for the sleeves. I guess I'll use 2 circulars because I'm not really a magic loop person. Maybe if I have like a 12-inch circular, maybe I could do that. But I have to admit, I've kind of been using needles as an excuse to not do those sleeves, so I have no excuse now. That is one of the projects I'm definitely working on getting back to. So I was thrilled to find this size of Flexiflips, and I picked up those. And then after that, since we both have boys that are in elementary school, we had to get back home so we could have enough time to go pick them up from school. So that was the end of Monday, day 1 of our crawl. Day 2 of our crawl was Tuesday, and I had a few things that I needed to do on that morning, and I think my friend did as well. So we decided to keep that day light, and that day was the day we picked to go to Trinity Ridge Alpacas, which is kind of, if you look at the map of the crawl, it is kind of off by itself. And they opened at noon, so it was actually perfect for us to be able to get a few things done in the morning and then just go to that one stop. And I've been there before. Unfortunately, the alpacas are no longer there. The couple who own that, I keep calling it an alpaca farm even though they don't have the alpacas anymore. They are retiring and they're going to be doing traveling, and so keeping the alpacas was not really possible. So although she does still have some fleeces that still need to be processed, the yarn that came from her animals is now in limited quantities, so I knew that I definitely wanted to buy some of it. And so that is where I got, when I got this yarn, and I picked up 2 skeins. So it's a light fawn colored yarn, and I really like the color. I really like that it's kind of brown and white kind of together. And I picked 2 skeins because it's sport weight, 285 yards. A lot of times with sport weight, I always think, oh, if I just had a little bit more, I could do X project, but I don't have 2 skeins. So no idea yet what this is going to become, but I'm glad that I at least picked up 2 skeins for that. Yeah, I really, it's just, I mean, you can't feel the softness through the screen, but oh, it's so soft. Really love that. And then she also had, you know, other brands, other makers of yarns. And this one is a 50% baby alpaca, 50% tencel, so it's soft and also shiny. It's from the Alpaca Yarn Company. It's Maraquita, I think is the name of the base. But this is just a really, really gorgeous color. It is 400 yards, so a fingering weight yarn. And unfortunately, there was only 1 skein, but I fell in love with the color so much that I just had to go ahead and buy it, even though it's 1 skein. And this is going to become a shawl. It'll be small since it's only 1 skein. And it's going to be a shawl with beads. I actually got beads at the bead shop, so I will show you the beads when I talk about the day we went to the bead shop. So I'll keep this yarn out so I can show it to you with the beads. So again, no pattern exactly picked out yet, but definitely it's going to become a shawl with beads. And so, you know, we got to chat with Janet for a while, but when we were checking out, you know, I was being polite and I told my friend she could go first, and let me go grab something I forgot to grab. So I told my friend that she could go first, and then when it was my turn to check out, she was like, oh, you win the door prize because you're the, I think it was the 5th person to come by today or something like that. So felt a little guilty because if I had gone first, my friend would have won the prize. But it's this bag, Alpaca My Yarn. Such a cute, I mean, I have tons of tote bags and I don't necessarily need another one, but this is so cute that this one is one that is definitely, I've already used it a couple of times. So it's definitely going to be used because it is way too cute. So thank you, Heather, for letting me, or for going first and letting me win the door prize there for that day. Really, really like the bag. But that was it for that day. We got back, picked up the boys from school, and rested up for the next day because the next day was kind of the long trip and the long day. So I'll tell you about that next. So Wednesday, we basically got started pretty early because we were going to be driving up to do, if you're local in the area, the Gainesville, Whitesboro, Sherman shops. So 3 shops that where we are, it takes about an hour and a half to get up to that area. So we wanted to make sure that we were there pretty much at 10, the first shop, so we could go ahead and get started because, again, since we were doing it while the kids were at school, we had a very specific limited time. So basically dropped off the kids at school and then jumped in the car and drove. So the first place we went was Gainesville to Cynthias Corner. And 2 years ago on the crawl, when I went to Cynthias Corner, she was in a very, very tiny shop. And I think it was just this summer she moved to a different location that was a much larger shop. And yeah, it is a much larger shop. Things were spread out. She had room to actually have a nice knitting area. And then she said they're going to start, I think she said weaving and spinning. There's another section back there. So it was really nice to see that she was able to open up her space and to be able to add new things, especially community-related events. So there, I was actually pretty restrained. This is a dyer that she said is actually kind of a friend of hers. And this is the color, it's called Cynthia's Iris. So it was dyed specifically for Cynthia and her shop. And this is just a mini skein on this color, but I really wanted to get this one since it was kind of special to the shop. So that is what I got at Cynthia's Corner. And then we drove to Whitesboro to Quixotic Fibers. And I had already warned my friend that this was a shop we were probably going to spend quite a bit of time in, and possibly quite a bit of money, because I will be honest, Quixotic is amazing. It is really a fantastic shop, and the only thing bad about it is that it is an hour and a half away. But maybe that's also the good thing about it, because I don't know what would happen if I were to be able to go to the shop all the time. So I have to admit, this is where restraints kind of went out the window a bit, especially with all of the Dream in Color offerings that that they had in the shop. If you like Dream in Color yarn and you are anywhere in the area, you have to go to Quixotic Fibers. It is definitely an amazing store, and there were lots of other great things that were there, but I was really once I saw the Dream in Color stuff, that's really kind of what I was focused on. So the first thing that caught my eye was this colorway. And again, this is not something that is my typical usual go-to color, but there was just something about this, all the colors. I think it was the pinks and the grays and other things in there. It just really caught my eye. And originally I had wanted to do this for a larger project, but there were only 2 skeins, and I needed 3, which I'll talk about that larger project in a minute. So I decided just to get 1 skein of this and do something, I don't know what yet, something smaller with it. Then my other possibility was this color, which again, this is not something I would typically pick out, but yeah, this, for some reason that day, was just really calling to me. And by the way, these are all smooshy with cashmere, so the fingering weight, that is the merino cashmere nylon blend, and I think it's a, yeah, it's a 70-20-10, so 20% cashmere. So absolutely just gorgeous colors in there. And again, this only had 2 skeins, and so I couldn't get it for the project that I want to use this yarn for. So the project, I knit maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's been a while. I knit a Hitafude however many syllables it needs to have. So that cardigan, and it is one of my favorite finished items that I throw on when I just need a little bit of extra warmth, and it's also, it looks really pretty. I kind of have it in this kind of dark wine colorway, and I love it. It was fun to knit, and it's a really nice wearable project. So I decided that I want to make another Hitafude. And I used Dream in Color Smooshy with Cashmere for my first one, and I really like how that turned out, so I decided I wanted to use that base for the next one. And so I looked on Ravelry, and apparently I used 3 skeins, and so I knew that I needed to buy 3 skeins. And those 2 colorways, I was going to do kind of a crazier Hitafude. And those 2 colorways only had 2 skeins each, so I couldn't pick those. So then I was looking at this other, maybe more sedate color. It was blues and greens, but blues and greens that were very close to one another. So although you could tell that it was tonal, it was not going to be something that was like wild differences in color. So I was looking at that and thinking, okay, that would be kind of like the safe choice, and that would be different from the other color that I have. But I just kept coming back to some of the slightly more, especially for me, wild colors. And I thought, you know, I kind of want to do just a really fun Hitafude. So this is the color that I ultimately chose. So if you look at like this part of the skein, it looks kind of tame, you know, kind of light blue. And then the other parts of the skein start to have some speckles and some other colors in it, so you can see all of those. And in this one, the way the skein is wound, you can see those colors up at the top of the skein. So I have no idea what this is going to look like. It might be a little too crazy, but I think that this looks like a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time My friend and Carla were both really patient trying to help me figure out, do I want to go with this more wild option, or do I want to pick the safe blues and greens that were much darker. And I also decided maybe it would be good to have, since I have a dark Hittifeud, maybe it would be good to have one that is a lighter color option. So ultimately I decided to go with these. So this is a project that I am really itching to cast on, even though it starts with a provisional cast on, which is a little tedious to do. I am really itching to cast this on, and the only reason I have not wound a skein and done it is because I need to finish the swatches. So basically this is going to be my reward for when I finish the swatches and do that guild presentation. Gonna wind the skein and do my provisional cast on and get started on my next Hittifeud. So hopefully in 2 weeks I will have some progress to show you guys. And then the other thing, they had Diana Couture trunk show is I love Diana's bags, but unfortunately right now I need bags that either zip closed is the best, or if they do have a drawstring, they need to be really secure, because man, Wally and Eva they seem to be able to find yarn even when I try to hide it. If I think I put it on a bookshelf up high and they can't find it, they find it. And so with Diana's bags, usually like the yarn owl types of things, there's an opening, which is great for when you want, you know, to have the yarn pull out. But for storage of project bags, I'm really afraid that if Wally realizes he can get his paw in that opening, which he totally can, that he would be able to get access to the yarn. I think that would go badly. So as much, there is one Harry Potter one that she had that I was really interested in, I decided not to get the any bags. But a while back, I think it was actually at DFW Fiber Fest, I bought her case that she makes for that handy gauge ruler, and I bought a black one that had a different saying on it. This one says measure twice, knit once. I'm now blanking on what the black one said, but I had the black one, and I picked that one mostly because she didn't have the blue whenever I was picking the black one. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get the blue one because that's really the color that I wanted originally. And so I went ahead and bought that. And I need to, actually I did put the gauge ruler. So the gauge ruler I had already bought, so I did not buy this, but in case you didn't watch that episode where I showed you guys this, or if you just need a reminder. So basically the idea is that you knit your swatch and then you hold this up to the swatch and it tells you your gauge. So I did switch it over to this case. Anyway, so now I have a blue case, which I'm happier with. So I've made that purchase as well. That's everything that I got at Quixotic. Then we went over to Sherman, the town, to go to a balanced skein, and that is a new yarn shop. It just opened this summer, and it was a little, we were unsure about the location at first because it ended up being in kind of like not a mall, that's the wrong word, but you go into an interior section and there are different shops that are you know, kind of along the edges, and it's got like a central area where people can, with tables that people could eat and stuff. So once we figured out, oh, you have to go in here and then find the shop, then we were able to find it. So it's a cute little shop, and they had a couple of dyers, and one of them is Phoenix Fiber Co., which I'm not familiar with, but she had a selection of tweed yarns, sorry, brain fart there, of tweed yarns, and I saw this one and I really liked this color. So you can see the little tweedy bits in there, probably where it's lighter you can see it a little bit better. I really liked this color. This is a DK weight, and I think this would make a fabulous hat. May make a hat for Luke out of it, because it's probably I think the red hat that I made him is a red with cables. I think it was with cables. and it's probably getting a little on the smaller side. He probably needs a new hat for winter, so it might become a hat for me. I haven't decided yet, but this is definitely going to be a hat, either for me or for Luke. Actually, I can probably make one for me, and it would fit Luke too. So, hey, I'm going to make a hat that Luke and I can share. There we go. So I really like that yarn. And then since it was getting kind of late, we had an hour-and-a-half drive to get back home, but we knew that we were hungry. We decided to go ahead and eat lunch while we were there, and there was a little coffee shop that also had sandwiches that was right there in that space, and so that is what we ate at. We actually had some brisket tacos. Then we took the long drive back home, and just in time basically to run home, kind of put our yarn away, and then each go pick up our kids from school. So that was a really full day, a really great day, and not to knock the other two stops, but Quixotic was definitely a favorite destination of that day, and along the entire crawl. Definitely one of the favorite shops. So that was an exhausting day, and we took Thursday off. We both needed to kind of catch up on some things at home, and then we headed out again on Friday. So before I talk about Friday, I was looking at the stack of yarn, and there was one that I forgot to tell you guys about. This is from Dragonfly Fibers, so Dragonfly Fibers, and purple and gray. This was on the wall at Quixotic while I was trying to decide on colors for the Hintafeud, and I just kept staring at it, and it ended up on the checkout with the other yarn as well. I really was not very restrained in that shop. And it turns out Dragonfly Fibers is actually a sponsor for Tour de Sock, so depending upon what that last sock is for stage 6, this could potentially be the yarn I use for that, and then I would get sponsor points, or I may save it for something else. I don't know, this was kind of an impulse purchase. Okay, so Friday, we had a third friend that joined us. So someone who comes to our knitting group on Friday, or on our knitting groups on Mondays. So this was on Friday. So I did the driving that day, so I picked up the friend I'd been crawling with, and we picked up our other friends, and we headed off to Fort Worth. And that was when we started off at West 7th Wool. And again, that is a stop that I knew would probably get, again, not quite as unrestrained as Quixotic, but definitely a shop where the wallet would open up and a little wider. And the reason we picked Friday for that shop is that's when Brazen Stitchery was there, so Stacy and Penny with their trunk show, and I definitely wanted to see them. And I hemmed and hawed over the self-striping yarn for a good long time, and finally ended up with number 4, which is which is the 4th Doctor, so a Doctor Who reference. There's Brazen Stitchery's cute little sheep. And so this is basically the colors of the Doctor Who scarf, the famous scarf. And so really happy with that one. She actually had an entire sock, like a knee-high sock, knitted out of this as a sample, and I really liked the colors and how it worked up. So that is the Brazen Stitchery that I bought. And then I noticed that they had a few balls of self-striping lollipop yarn. So lollipop yarn. Apparently this stuff goes pretty fast. And they had 5 balls left. When we were at McKinney Knittery, she had 2 balls of lollipop yarn left, and I thought the colors were okay, but I didn't love them, and I decided I really did like these colors. Hopefully you can see them, and they're listed 6 rows each of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors. So I don't know if you can see all 6 colors that are in there, but that's the one I decided on. And so my first lollipop yarn, apparently that's something that has gotten pretty popular. Then apparently I just really liking some different than my usual types of things here. So this is from the Lemonade shop. So mostly gray, but then you've got the nice little rainbow that's going on one end of the skein. So like if I knit socks or something, it'll be mostly gray with just those little pops of the rainbow colors. Probably this will become socks. Maybe, probably, I don't know. Not really sure entirely what to do with it yet. Again, it's just something that caught my eye and that I decided to go ahead and get. And then talk about impulse purchases. I have not yet bought any hedgehog fibers, and I know that's something that is pretty popular with people. So I finally decided to go ahead and buy some hedgehog, and I picked this one that has reds and pinks. Again, no idea what it's going to become. It really was just kind of a, you know, I haven't bought hedgehog, I kind of like this one, add it to the stack. I think by the end of the week, just kind of tired of you know, basically decision fatigue, tired of making choices, and I think unfortunately I probably just maybe went a little over on what I was originally intending to do, but you know what, I'm not going to be sad about that because this is pretty and it will become something someday. So we had fun in West 7th Wool. And my friends made some purchases too. And then next door to West 7th Wool, a new bookstore had opened up. So a small independent bookstore, and we decided that we wanted to go in and check that out. So if you are local in the area and you ever go visit West 7th Wool, save some time and go to the bookshop. It is definitely worth checking out. It is not a used bookshop, so it is new books. Maybe they had used books somewhere, but it seemed like they were new books. But they have them arranged really nicely. They have this little like alcove area that looks like a kitchen, and that's where all the like cooking books are. The children's book sections, like there's one bookshelf that looks like a little house. There's something that looks almost like trees, and the books are stored in the trunks of the trees, and it's like a little alcove. It was just a really nice setup and display. And so I was looking for chapter books for Luke because he has really gotten into reading chapter books, and he really likes the what is it, Captain Underpants, but more so, oh my gosh, I'm totally blank, Dogman, which is the same author as Captain Underpants. That seems to be his kind of current favorite. So this is also the same author as that wrote those. So Ricky Ricotta's Mighty Robot, I'd never even heard of this one. This is the first book of that series. I have not yet given this to Luke. I've been kind of waiting. I'll probably give it to him this weekend because it's a holiday weekend for school. So I'll probably give it to him. Then it has a little bit of section, it's comic books, a comic book type of thing, and then it has others that are actual, you know, story. Wow. Okay, sorry about the glare on the light there. So I think this is just perfect at his level and something that he would really be interested in. So, oh, interesting. Sorry, I just realized this says something that says Fliporama, and it's actually telling you, like, put your left hand here and your right thumb here, and I guess you're supposed to, like, flip. I don't really know exactly. I'll have to figure that out. Anyway, it looks like a really fun book. And then I also picked up Neil Gaiman's Norse Mythology. This is something that I think I have on audiobook. I actually need to check my audiobooks. But I really like the physical copy. I really like the pages, how, I don't know if you can see, the pages are the uneven edges. And it's just a really nice physical copy. And I realized this is something that I would actually like on my shelf. So, so I picked that up. After that, we went down the street, because it's not too far away, to Georgina Estefania, which is the machine knitting, where she does mostly garments and other things. And so we got to see one of the machines was running, so we got to see that. And then she was having a sample sale, and one of my friends bought one of the samples. And then we went just right next door is where the Saori weaving was set up. So, you know, we looked, we learned a little bit about the weaving, and two of us sat down, me and one of my friends sat down and did a little bit of adding to the weaving that was on one of the looms. And I've done, you know, rigid heddle weaving before, but I've never done, I've never actually used a loom that has the foot pedals that you use. So that was definitely an interesting experience, and so that was a fun stop. And then we headed off to the bead shop, the Artful Bead, and I had 2 projects that I wanted to get beads for, so I'd actually brought the yarn with me so I could match them up. And then I ended up kind of falling in love with this other set of beads that I got, and I realized, and I'll tell you the yarn, I realized I had yarn at home that would be perfect for it. So the first yarn that I brought was Panorama Fiber Arts. So this is another gradient. I bought this, oh, hopefully the light's not great on that yarn there. So it's a green in the center and it goes out. I bought this at DFW Fiber Fest, and I want to make an Anna Victoria pattern. I'm not sure which one yet out of this, and so I knew I needed beads. So I was looking at lots of different colors of beads, and I even thought about potentially like getting different colors to work with the gradient as it goes through, but I decided to pick one color throughout. So hopefully you can see that. These are purple, and so they especially look good on the purple section, but they even work, apparently not in this video, but they even work on the other colors. But I think what I'm going to do when I knit the shawl is I'm actually going to work from the outside in, because the green is fine and lovely, but you know, I mean, if you know me at all, the purple and blue is more where I'm at. So to make sure that I get the purple and blue in my shawl, I'm going to work from the outside in on this one. So definitely I think the purple beads are a good choice for that, and no matter how much of the inside I get to, they will still work. So I got several tubes of those, so I could hopefully have hundreds and hundreds of beads that I'm probably going to need for Anna Victoria. Then I showed you this. This was the yarn that I picked up at Trinity Bridge, the Alpaca farm. And so I knew that I wanted this to be something beaded. So I bought these beads. These are kind of, are they crystal? Yeah, so they're crystal, and then the lining is where the color is. And I thought those looked really, really nice up against this yarn that's not going to be like highly contrasting, so they probably won't pop out a lot, but I think that they'll give just a little extra to whatever I decide to make with this yarn. So I got a couple of tubes of those, and then I saw this pink, and hopefully this pink will, okay. Hopefully this pink looks good on camera. I saw this pink. It's just bright and cheerful, and these are size 8 beads, which the other ones I got are size 6. Usually size 6 are used on fingering weight and size 8 on lace weight, although you can sometimes get away with using size 8 on fingering. They didn't have this color in the size 6. So I was trying to think, okay, so if I wanted to use lace weight, and then it hit me. I have this really lovely silvery gray lace weight yarn. Silvery gray with pink beads. I have no idea what pattern yet, but I think that is going to have to become a thing. So silvery gray yarn, pink, nice pink beads. Once I figure out what pattern to use, that is something that I'm going to be working on. But probably this gradient is going to be the next shawl that I cast on. Now that I'm done with one beaded shawl, I get to start another one. So I'll definitely be working on that probably next. So I think the next things that I cast on will be my Hittifeud, and I have to pick a pattern for this yarn. I have a couple of ideas, but I haven't settled. But definitely an Anna Victoria pattern with the Panorama yarn. At that point, it was time to head home. And so we headed back and dropped off my friends, and yeah, that was the end of the crawl. So on Saturday, so the last weekend of the crawl, on Saturday there was a special event up in McKinney at Tup's Brewery, where it was basically kind of like a trunk show, mini fiber festival type of thing. So there were several dyers and designers and one bag maker that were up there, and that was actually a destination stop that you could get a stamp for, and it was the one that I did not get. I wanted to go, but I was unable to go. Although the friend that I did most of the crawling with, she did end up going, so she got her passport completely filled. But I was missing that one stamp. And the reason for that is because my husband and I had tickets to go see School of Rock. So we had season tickets for the Dallas Summer Musicals, and that is actually the last one of that season. And we had tickets for Saturday afternoon. So it really was not really possible for me to go up to McKinney. But at first, I thought that the show started at 3. So I had this bright idea that the event up in McKinney started at 10:30. So I would go up there at 10:30, do the event, eat something quick for lunch, and then meet my husband at Fair Park in Dallas to go see our show at 3. I thought that would be great. I would have plenty of time for that, and everything would work out. Well, I went to print out our tickets Saturday morning, and I looked at them and realized that the show started at 1:30, not at 3. Thank goodness I noticed before that morning. I noticed that morning before the show, so we didn't worry about missing any of the show. But that did mean that it didn't really give me enough time before the musical to go up to McKinney. And then I thought maybe when it's over, I'd actually talked my husband into possibly going up to McKinney afterwards. Maybe when it's over, we could hit it before the event ends. But the School of Rock lasted a little bit longer than I was expecting it to last, and by the time it was done, I was just tired. And by the time we got up to McKinney, we probably only would have had maybe 45 minutes, depending on traffic, probably only half an hour. My mom was watching Luke. It just kind of felt like, we probably should go ahead and get home. Although we did stop and have dinner, just the two of us. So we made it a nice afternoon date there. But anyway, so we didn't make it up to the McKinney stop. And then I didn't do anything on Sunday for the crawl. But School of Rock was really, really good. I didn't go into it with really any expectations. It was one of the things that was on our list for our season tickets. I probably would not have picked to go see it if I had had to buy it individually, and then I would have missed out because it really was quite good. I was impressed with the show, really impressed with the kids who were the performers. They did an amazing job, so I am glad that we went to go see it and have that experience. So that was a lot of fun. And then Sunday, I basically just rested. It was a fun week, but an exhausting week. Just trying to rest and get myself back to back to a normal work schedule this week, because I definitely let a lot of things kind of back up while I was basically playing hooky and doing all of the yarn crawl stuff. But it was a lot of fun. I had a really fabulous yarn crawl. Yeah, that's pretty much the bulk of what happened over the past 2 weeks. So for what I'm reading, basically I have been reading a lot by the author Charlie, let me get it right, Charlie Holmberg, H-O-L-M-B-E-R-G-L, link it in the show notes. So I had originally read her trilogy, The Paper Magician. So I really, really loved those books, like really, really loved. So I definitely recommend that trilogy. And so I noticed she had a couple of other standalone books, and then a book that was in the same universe as The Paper Magician called The Plastic Magician, which I'm pretty sure I mentioned at one point that I was planning on reading it. Anyway, so I did finish The Plastic Magician, and I did like that, not quite as well as The Paper Magician, but I did like The Plastic Magician. I think my biggest quibble with it is that the ending felt very rushed. There was a lot of setup and a lot of getting to the point where the mystery, basically it's not a mystery book, but there is kind of a whodunit type of thing, where the mystery was solved, and then it just kind of like rushed through the ending and ended. And I felt like after all that build up that there should have been more time spent on the resolution, and especially also what happens kind of after that resolution. So I still think that it was a good book. I just wish that the ending had been, maybe it needed to be 2 books instead of 1, but definitely wish it had been expanded a bit more. But then she has one called Magic Bitter, Magic Sweet, and that one I was listening to on audiobook, so I actually just finished that a few days ago. And overall, I think it was a good story. There were parts of it that felt like there was no forward movement. The main character was kind of literally physically trapped somewhere, but it also felt like we as readers were kind of trapped there for a while until the story started really moving again. A big chunk of the story is the main character does not, she has basically amnesia. She doesn't know her past. Only the certain point where she was basically found by this couple that kind of took her in and helped her out. And so she's trying to figure out who she really is. So that's really kind of the point of the book. If you can't tell from the title, there is magic involved, and I don't want to give away, you know, what her past was. But anyway, I think ultimately it was a pretty good book, and I would recommend it. But again, I guess maybe just from the Paper Magician trilogy, which I loved so much, I'm having higher expectations for the author, and I think if she hadn't written that trilogy that I loved so much, I would probably have enjoyed the other books a little bit more, because they are good books. They just aren't quite at that same level. And then I read Veins of Gold, which is really interesting. It took place during the time of the California Gold Rush, but it wasn't in California. It was actually in Utah, kind of near Salt Lake City, kind of with the Mormon settlement. But what was happening with the mining in California was definitely affecting the characters and what was happening where they were in Utah. And there is magic involved in that book as well. And again, it was a good book. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the story, and I probably would have enjoyed it even more if I hadn't been comparing it to the books that I really, really liked from this author. So I think this is a good author. I will probably continue reading her books. I think there's one more that I haven't read of hers yet. I need to look it up. But I guess I'm still wishing for more like the Paper Magician. And maybe I should just reread the Paper Magician trilogy and enjoy that. But I think that for a while I had been kind of stagnant in my reading. So I seem to go through, you know, peaks and valleys of when I do a lot of reading, and then I'm kind of at a point where there's not much reading that gets done. Some of it depends on the knitting projects that I'm working on. When I'm knitting something that is like a lot of garter stitch or just stockinette, especially in the rounds, where I can read while I'm knitting, I do tend to read more. And then sometimes I do listen to audiobooks while I'm reading as well. Though usually I'm listening to a lot of podcasts instead. Anyway, but I've been kind of, all summer really, I've been in kind of a reading drought. I haven't really been reading that much, but I want to get back to that point where I'm reading more. And I'm, you know, realizing, okay, so if you want time to read, you have to make time to read. So how am I going to find that time? You know, where in my day can I get time that I'm using maybe on something else that is not as important to me, that I could instead use that time to read. And I realize that there are a lot of times where I have a few minutes and just from boredom, I pull out my phone and I open up Facebook, or I open up one of those phone games. There's a game that I play. It's not Candy Crush, but it's like Candy Crush. And so, you know, I spend time playing that, and sometimes I will do that for 20, 30 minutes, and I will sit there and just waste that time on the phone when I realize, you know what, I have the Kindle app on my phone. There is no reason why I cannot open that and read a book instead. But even though I have the Kindle app like on that same front page of my phone as Facebook, my immediate kind of reflex is just to open up Facebook, open up Facebook, open up Facebook. And I even put Facebook in a folder that I labeled Stop and Think. So in that folder I put Facebook, and I put the game that I play, and 2 other apps that I realize I open up just when I'm bored and I'm wasting time. So I actually labeled that folder Stop and Think. And when I first did that, which was maybe even a year ago, it worked for a little while. And I realized that for the past few months that does not work anymore. Sometimes I feel a little guilty, or I feel that little momentary, oh, I'm supposed to stop and think about this before I open up Facebook, but I just jump right into that folder and open up Facebook or the game and, you know, waste 20 or 30 minutes. So I actually heard this on a podcast, this suggestion. So what I did is I took that little folder with Facebook in it and I moved it to another page on my phone. So I don't know how if Android phones are like this, but with an iPhone, if you have a bunch of apps, you know, you have several pages worth of apps, and so you have to actually, you know, flip through the pages to get to, you know, the last pages of apps and get those apps. So I put Facebook on the very last page, which is actually all the apps that I don't want to delete, but I like never look at, and so they're just kind of delegated back, way back to that last page. I put Facebook and those games on that page. Then, and this is what the podcast said, it's not really enough just to move that. You need to replace it. So in the spot on my phone, on that first page of apps, I put the Kindle app in the same place that Facebook used to be. So I just rearranged the little icons so that Kindle would be in the same place Facebook used to be. You guys, do you know how many times I have opened up the Kindle app in the past week? It really, really, truly is a memory reflex. That I'm bored, I have a few extra minutes, I pull out my phone, and I immediately, my thumb hits that app. It just, that space is where I go. I had been reading Veins of Gold for quite a while. I was probably like halfway through it at the start of the week. And just reading those, you know, 5-10 minutes here and there whenever I had a little downtime, I read through the end of the book pretty quickly. It really was amazing to me just how many times during the day I apparently did that and just had that memory reflex where I would usually go play the game or spend time on Facebook. And instead, I was using that time to read. So it's crazy how something that seems minor like that really can make a huge difference. So if that is something that you're finding, that if there's some app, some time-sucking app on your phone that you want to stop using, but you don't want to delete it from your phone, because there are times where, because I run a Facebook group, I do need to be able to check into Facebook if I'm away from my computer. So I can't get rid of it completely. But I can definitely make it where it's less convenient for me to access it. So if there's an app or something that is a time suck for you that you want to stop using, and there's another one that you would prefer to use instead, just move the location. Put the one you want to use instead in the same place as the other one. Move the other one to a different place on your phone. And again, that muscle memory and muscle reflex will just kind of take over, and you'll open up the thing that you actually want to do. So I'm really excited about that. I really noticed how much of a difference it has made. So I encourage you to give that a try if that is something you think might actually help you. So I started a book. I probably should have looked up the book. I can't remember the name of it. So the book that I'm reading now, I will put it in the show notes. Basically, it's a trilogy of books that the author 2 years ago won a Hugo Award for the first book in the trilogy. Then last year, she won the Hugo for the second book in the trilogy. And this year, she won a Hugo for the third book in the trilogy. That, I think, is the first time that, that a trilogy or a series has won all of its books. A Hugo Award definitely in a row. And so it is kind of a history-making type of book. So I decided, you know what, if this is something that is winning, you know, all the books in the trilogy is winning an award, let me give it a try. And so I've only gotten, I think I'm in the third, I just started the third chapter. And I have to say, it's a really different setup. It is a fantasy book. And the first part of the book really spends time setting up the world. And the second chapter, you've got kind of the main character that you're reading about, but it is told in second person. There are very few books that are written in second person, mostly because it's usually not done very well. So the you. So instead of the main character being I or the main character being she, the main character is you. And it's a really, really interesting feeling as you're reading that book, to have that second person point of view. And then the third chapter introduces another character, and that is told in a third person point of view. So it seems like it might only be that one character, that second person. I'll find out as I read more through the book. And I'm sorry that my mind is blanking on the name of the author or the book, so I will make sure to put that in the show notes. So I've only just started that, but hopefully with my new approach to making sure I have more time to read, I'll be able to read more of that and get through more of that first book to see if I recommend it and if I want to continue reading the rest of the trilogy. As far as what I'm watching, hasn't really been much. I know that our few shows that we still have remaining that we're watching, they're going to start new episodes coming up in September and October, so there are shows I'm looking forward to getting back into and watching some more things. Reminder about the Q3 knit along. So it is running through the end of September. So we are in our last month of this quarter's knit along. The theme is any shawl that was published in 2016 or earlier and has fewer than 20 projects on Ravelry, because we're trying to basically open up shawls that are gorgeous and wonderful and fantastic and just didn't get enough love or attention. And there's so many to choose from, and you guys that have posted, I forgot to grab my iPad, go to the FO thread. I will show them all off either next time or at the end of the quarter. You guys have been making some really great things so far, and the works in progress have been great too. I have not started mine. I do have a pattern picked out. I do have the yarn picked out. I just haven't started. It is a DK weight shawl. I have the retreat that I'm going to in a couple of weeks. So I think that even though I haven't started, I will still be able to start and finish by the end of September. We'll see. So I am still planning on actually participating myself in the knit along. But I showed a picture of the prize, but I wanted to show you guys on camera the prize that one person will win. So a random number from the FO thread, so make sure you're posting in the FO thread when you have your finished shawl, will win this pretty skein of yarn. So this is a sport weight yarn. The dyer is Toil and Trouble. So there we go, Toil and Trouble. So sport weight yarn, 100% superwash merino, 328 yards. And the reason I picked this yarn is because, at least when I checked it at the beginning of the knit along, this yarn had fewer than 20 projects posted on Ravelry. So I thought that that was appropriate to the theme of the knit along. So one prize this time, this skein of yarn. Make sure between now and the end of September, if you have not already posted your finished shawl, make sure you post in the FO thread so you can be entered into the prize drawing for the yarn. And that should do it for today's episode. Thank you so very much for watching. I really appreciate that you take time out of your day to listen to me talk all about my my fiber experiences. But again, as I keep saying, it's not enough to me just to talk at you. I definitely want to hear back from you. So I love the conversations, whether you go post on YouTube in the comments or if you post in the Ravelry group. So either place or both places. Please post your comments. I definitely want to hear what you have to say. If you went on the yarn crawl in DFW, I definitely want to hear about your adventures. If you have some pattern suggestions for any of the yarn that I showed you guys, I would love to hear that. And yeah, just definitely please comment, because that is the fun part, not just me talking to you guys, but having that back and forth conversation. Also, don't forget, if you are watching this on YouTube, if you have not yet hit the subscribe button, please do that. And also, if you like the episode and you want to hit the thumbs up button, you know, that's really nice and I appreciate that as well. I realized that the previous episode I forgot to upload to iTunes, so I will get back to doing these on iTunes. But I'm not really sure if people are watching on iTunes, so if that is where you are watching the podcast, please let me know. It's an extra step in the process. I have to make a smaller video, save it somewhere else, so it gets uploaded to iTunes. And if really nobody is watching on iTunes, I might kind of cut that out of the process. But even if one person is watching on iTunes, I will continue doing that. So if you are the one person who's watching on iTunes, let me know. You can come to the Ravelry group and post there, or you can send me a private message on Ravelry. So let me know. Otherwise, I think most of you are watching on YouTube. Anyway, so comments, please. Subscribe and thumbs up. If you are watching on iTunes, a review would be awesome. And until next time, happy knitting! So, quick follow-up about the swatches. So I left my room after recording the podcast episode and walked out and found this on the floor. Yeah, apparently I had not been paying enough attention to the cats, and I guess they must have snagged it out of the basket that I had it in. This is the one that's the 100% BFL. So hey, at least I enjoyed making this one. I will be remaking this because I am not going to pass around this ratty swatch whenever I do my guild presentation. But yeah, the cats definitely got into that. So when I say I have to have project bags that really close well, I mean it, because they will do this.